Please don't die. Wake up.
He was worth more than cities, yet he lay dying on a rain-soaked street with no one willing to stop. His expensive shoes filled with water. His breath came in broken gasps. Cars passed. People looked away. Across the road stood a poor widow, Ayanda Nkosi, clutching her two hungry children. She had no money, no shelter, no guarantee her family would survive the night. Helping him meant risking everything she had left. Walking away meant choosing safety over conscience. She hesitated, then she stepped forward. Before the story begins, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if stories of humanity, fate, and quiet miracles move your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Ayanda Nkosi woke up before the sun as she always did. Not because she wanted to, but because hunger had a way of shaking sleep out of the body long before morning arrived. The small room they lived in felt tighter each day. The cracked concrete walls held the night's cold, and the thin curtain that served as a door barely moved with the breeze. Ayanda lay still for a moment, listening. Two different breaths filled the room, one steady and controlled, the other shallow and uneven. Ibrahim was already awake. He sat up on the thin mattress they shared, knees pulled to his chest, eyes fixed on the ceiling as if he were counting invisible cracks. At 11 years old, he had learned to wait quietly, to think before he spoke, to carry worry the way other boys carried school bags. "Morning, Mama," he whispered. Ayanda forced a smile. "Morning, my son." On the other side of the mattress, Charity stirred and coughed softly. The sound cut through Ayanda like a blade. Her daughter's cough had grown worse over the past week, dry and persistent, the kind that stayed even after water and prayer. Ayanda reached out and pressed the back of her hand against Charity's forehead. Warm, not burning, but not right either. "We'll be okay today." Ayanda murmured more to herself than to the child. She rose quietly, wrapping her faded shawl around her shoulders. The shawl had once been bright blue. Now it was a tired gray, thinned by years of washing and sun. Everything in Ayanda's life seemed to fade eventually. Outside, the settlement was already waking. Metal pots clanged. A baby cried. Somewhere a radio played an old gospel song through static. The smell of fried dough drifted through the air, cruel and tempting. Ayanda stepped out and filled a plastic container with water from the communal tap. As she bent down, her reflection stared back at her from the surface. Sunken eyes, cheekbones sharper than they used to be, lips cracked from too many days without enough food. She used to look different, before the accident, before the phone call that shattered her world in one sentence. There has been an incident at the site. Her husband Thabo Nkosi had left that morning laughing, promising to bring bread home. He never returned. A collapsed scaffold, no insurance, no compensation, just condolences that dried up faster than tears. From that day on, Ayanda became everything: mother, father, protector, provider, without ever being enough. She returned to the room and poured a small amount of water into 2 cups. No tea, no sugar. Those were luxuries now. "This is breakfast," she said lightly, handing a cup to Ibrahim. He took it without complaint. "It's fine, Mama." Charity sat up slowly, her small hands shaking as she held the cup. "Mama, will I go to school today?" Ayanda's chest tightened. Charity loved school, loved the songs, the colors, the feeling of being like other children. But school required fees, uniforms, books, things Ayanda hadn't been able to provide in weeks. Soon, Ayanda said gently, "When you feel stronger." Charity nodded, though disappointment flickered across her face before she looked down. After the children finished drinking, Ayanda wrapped Charity in an extra cloth and stepped outside again. She needed work. Any work. Washing clothes, cleaning stalls, carrying loads. Pride was a luxury she had buried long ago. She first went to the small roadside eatery near the bus stop. The owner barely looked at her. "Not today," the woman said, already turning away. Ayanda moved on. A tailor shook his head. A shopkeeper told her to come back next week. A construction foreman laughed softly when he saw her thin frame. By midday, the sun pressed down mercilessly. Ayanda's feet ached. Her stomach twisted, painfully empty and angry. She returned home to check on the children. Charity lay curled up, eyes half closed. Ibrahim sat beside her, fanning her gently with a piece of cardboard. "She coughed a lot, Mama," he said. "I tried to help." Ayanda knelt and pulled both children into her arms. She breathed in their scent, dust-soaked childhood and felt fear rise quietly inside her, the kind that didn't scream but stayed heavy and constant. As afternoon crept toward evening, footsteps approached. Ayanda didn't need to look up to know who it was. Mr. Joseph Mbeki stood at the entrance, his large belly straining against his shirt keys, jingling loudly in his hand as if to announce his power. "You have been avoiding me," he said. Ayanda stood slowly. "I wasn't avoiding you, sir. I was looking for work," he snorted. "That doesn't pay rent." "I will pay," she said quickly. "Please just give me a little more time." "How much time?" he demanded. "I've heard that story before." Ibrahim stepped forward without thinking. "Sir, my mother is trying—" "Silence," Mbeki snapped, turning his glare on the boy. "Children should not speak in adult matters." Ayanda placed a hand on Ibrahim's shoulder, steadying him. "Please," she said again, her voice trembling now, despite her effort. "My daughter is sick." Mbeki glanced briefly at Charity, then looked away. "That is not my problem. By tomorrow evening, if there is no money, I will lock this place." He turned and walked away, leaving dust and fear behind him. Ibrahim's fists clenched. "It's not fair." Ayanda swallowed hard. "Life is not fair, my son, but we endure." That night, Ayanda lay awake long after the children slept. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. It leaked through a crack in the roof, dripping steadily into a bowl she had placed beneath it. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop sounded like time running out. She stared into the darkness, praying not for wealth, not for miracles, but for strength. Enough strength to survive one more day. She didn't know that before the next sunrise, her life would cross paths with a man whose fate was unraveling just as fast as hers. She didn't know that the poorest choice she would make would become the richest moment of her life. Morning arrived without mercy. The rain had stopped, but it left behind a damp heaviness that clung to everything, the ground, the air, even Ayanda's chest. She rose quietly, careful not to wake the children. Her body ached from the night spent half sitting, half listening, counting every drip from the leaking roof like it was a warning. She stepped outside and looked at the sky, gray, uncertain, like her future. Ayanda wrapped her shawl tighter and began walking. She walked farther than she ever had before, past familiar streets into neighborhoods where the buildings stood taller and the people looked through her instead of at her. Each step carried hope and humiliation side by side. At the first office building, a security guard stopped her. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, sir," Ayanda said softly. "I'm looking for cleaning work, anything." He scanned her from head to toe, then shook his head. "Not here." At a small grocery store, the owner listened briefly, then sighed. "I already hired someone." At a roadside restaurant, a woman glanced at Ayanda's worn sandals and shook her head before Ayanda even spoke. By mid-morning, Ayanda's voice had grown hoarse from repeating the same sentence. "Please, I can work." Each rejection landed harder than the last. She sat on a low wall to rest, pressing her palm against her stomach as it growled painfully. Hunger had a way of making the world blurry. She closed her eyes for a moment and almost missed it. A man nearby was speaking in a low voice to someone on the phone. "No, I can't wait any longer. The medicine isn't helping." Ayanda opened her eyes. The man leaned against a parked car, his face pale, his hand trembling slightly as he clutched his chest. He ended the call and stood there breathing heavily. People passed. No one stopped. Ayanda stood instinctively, then froze. "Mind your business," a voice inside her whispered. "You have your own problems." She hesitated only a second, then shook her head and walked away. She needed to get back home. Charity would be awake by now. When she reached the settlement, she sensed something was wrong even before she saw it. The door. The thin curtain door hung crookedly pulled aside. Ayanda broke into a run. Inside, Ibrahim stood frozen in the center of the room, his school bag clutched tightly in his hands. Charity sat on the mattress, eyes wide, her small body stiff with fear. "What happened?" Ayanda demanded, her voice sharp with panic. Ibrahim swallowed. "Mr. Mbeki came." Ayanda's heart dropped. "He said we have until evening." Ibrahim continued. "He locked the outside storage. He said if you don't pay today, he will throw our things out." Ayanda's knees weakened. She sank onto the mattress beside Charity, pulling both children into her arms. Charity began to cry quietly. "Mama, where will we go?" Ayanda didn't answer. She didn't have one. She sent Ibrahim to school anyway. "Education is something no one can take from you," she said firmly, though her heart ached as she watched him walk away. Shoulders slumped but head held high. With Charity bundled against her chest, Ayanda returned to the streets. She went to the market where Mama Zanelli Dlamini sold roasted corn. The older woman looked up as Ayanda approached and frowned. My child, you look thinner every day. Ayanda forced a small smile. Life is teaching me patience. Mama Zanelle handed her a piece of corn without asking. Eat. Ayanda hesitated. I'll pay later. Mama Zanelle waved her hand. Later is fine. Hunger cannot wait. As Ayanda ate slowly, she explained everything: the rent, the sickness, the deadline. Mama Zanelle listened silently, her face tightening with each word. When my husband died, the woman said finally, I thought the world would end. It didn't, but it tried. She reached into her apron and pulled out a few crumpled bills. It's not much. Ayanda shook her head quickly. No, you need it. Mama Zanelle grabbed her wrist. Pride doesn't feed children. Tears welled in Ayanda's eyes as she accepted the money. It still wasn't enough, not even close. By afternoon, Charity's breathing had worsened. Each breath sounded like a struggle. Ayanda decided she couldn't wait any longer. She took Charity to St. Luke's Public General Hospital. The waiting area was overcrowded, noisy, and heavy with the smell of antiseptic and exhaustion. Ayanda waited for hours, holding Charity against her chest, whispering prayers with each cough. Finally, a nurse called them in. After a brief examination, the doctor frowned. She needs medication, possibly tests. Ayanda's heart pounded. How much? The doctor named an amount that made her dizzy. I don't have it, Ayanda whispered. The doctor sighed, already tired. We can give her something temporary, but without proper treatment it may get worse. Temporary, always temporary. As Ayanda left the hospital carrying Charity on her back, the sun dipped lower in the sky. Evening approached. The deadline approached. When Ibrahim returned from school, he found Ayanda sitting quietly, staring at the floor. Mama. She looked up. We may have to leave tonight. Ibrahim's lips trembled, but he nodded. I'll help carry things. Ayanda looked at her son, the boy who should have been worrying about homework, not homelessness, and felt something inside her harden. They packed what little they had, clothes, a pot, a blanket. As the sky darkened, rain clouds gathered again. They stepped out just as Mr. Mbeki approached, keys already in hand. Time is up, he said coldly. Ayanda didn't argue. She only nodded, holding Charity close as Ibrahim carried the bag. As they walked away, rain began to fall, slow at first, then heavier. They had nowhere to go. Then through the rain, Ayanda noticed a shape ahead. A man. He staggered once, then collapsed onto the wet pavement. Cars passed, lights flashed. No one stopped. Ayanda slowed her steps. Her mind screamed, no, not today, not now. But her feet betrayed her. She stopped and turned at it. The rain thickened, turning the road into a mirror of broken light. Ayanda stood still, Charity's small body warm against her back. Ibrahim beside her, clutching their single bag. Ahead of them, the man lay unmoving on the pavement, one arm twisted at an unnatural angle, his jacket darkened by rain. Mama Ibrahim whispered, we should go. Ayanda knew he was right. Every step back toward that man was a step away from safety, whatever safety meant now. The little money Mama Zanelle had given her was folded tight in her pocket. It wasn't enough for rent, but it might buy food, or medicine, or a night under a roof somewhere. She looked down at Charity. Her daughter's breathing rattled faintly. Ayanda's heart clenched. Then she looked back at the man. A car slowed as it passed, its headlights sweeping over him like a question. It didn't stop. Another followed, and another. The road swallowed him whole as if he were invisible. Ayanda's throat tightened. She remembered the night Thabo died, how she had waited for help that never came, how the phone rang and rang before anyone answered. No one deserves to die alone, she said quietly. Ibrahim's eyes filled with fear. Mama, please. Ayanda shifted Charity higher on her back and stepped forward. The man's face was pale, lips tinged with blue. He was breathing, but barely. Each breath came shallow and broken, like it hurt to exist. Sir, Ayanda called, kneeling carefully beside him. Can you hear me? No response. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck. A pulse weak, but there. Ayanda exhaled shakily. He's alive. Ibrahim hovered behind her. What do we do? Ayanda's mind raced. An ambulance would cost money. Time. She didn't have either. Help me sit him up, she said. Ibrahim hesitated, then nodded, setting down the bag. Together they struggled to lift the man. He groaned softly, his head lolling to one side. I think he's sick, Ibrahim said. Not drunk. Ayanda nodded. Heart, maybe. Or something worse. She reached into the man's jacket pocket, searching for identification. Her fingers brushed against a smooth rectangle, a phone soaked but intact. She pressed the screen. Nothing. In the other pocket, she found a wallet. It was heavy. Ayanda froze. For a moment, temptation whispered, this could change everything. The thought scared her more than hunger ever had. She opened the wallet just enough to see crisp bills and a sleek black card. Her hands trembled. Mama Ibrahim asked. Ayanda closed the wallet and pushed it back into the pocket. Not ours. She looked around desperately. The rain soaked her hair, her clothes, her resolve. We need to get him to a hospital, she said. How? Ibrahim asked. Ayanda scanned the road. Taxis sped by splashing water. She stepped forward, waving frantically. One passed, then another. Finally, a battered yellow taxi slowed, its driver leaning out. What's going on? Please, Ayanda pleaded. He's very sick. We need the hospital. The driver eyed the man, then Ayanda, then the children. I don't do charity. Ayanda reached into her pocket and held out the crumpled bills. This is all I have. The driver hesitated, then nodded sharply. Get him in. Relief flooded Ayanda so fast it almost knocked her over. Together they dragged the man into the back seat. Ayanda squeezed in beside him, Charity still strapped to her back, Ibrahim in the front holding the bag. St. Luke's, Ayanda said breathlessly. The taxi lurched forward. Inside the car, the man stirred. His eyes fluttered open briefly, dark, unfocused. Water, he whispered. Ayanda pressed her bottle to his lips, letting him sip slowly. You'll be okay, she murmured, though she had no idea if it was true. By the time they reached the hospital, the man had gone limp again. The driver stopped abruptly. Here. Ayanda climbed out, her legs shaking. She tried to lift the man, but her strength failed her. Help, she cried. A nurse rushed out with a stretcher. Others followed. The man was whisked away, leaving Ayanda standing in the rain, soaked and trembling. Ma'am, the nurse said briskly. Is he family? No, Ayanda replied. I just found him. The nurse frowned. We'll need someone to take responsibility. Payment, admission. Ayanda's heart sank. I'll pay what I can, she said, reaching for her pocket. Inside, her fingers touched the thin ring she wore on a chain around her neck. Thabo's ring. The last thing of value she owned. She closed her eyes. Okay, she whispered. Ayanda removed the chain and placed the ring in the nurse's hand. Please. The nurse looked at the ring, then at Ayanda's face wet with rain and tears. Something softened in her eyes. I'll see what I can do, she said quietly. Hours passed in a blur. Ayanda sat on a hard bench, Charity asleep against her chest, Ibrahim leaning into her side. The hospital hummed with quiet, suffering coughs, murmurs, distant cries. Finally, a doctor approached. He's stable for now, he said, but he needs surgery and observation. Ayanda nodded, relief and fear tangling together. Thank you. The doctor paused. You should know this won't be cheap. Ayanda smiled weakly. Nothing ever is. Night deepened. Ayanda fed Charity a little water and rubbed her back when she coughed. Ibrahim's head drooped, sleep claiming him despite everything. Ayanda looked down the corridor toward the operating room doors, praying silently for a man she didn't know. She didn't see Daniel Tete watching her from behind half-lidded eyes, drifting in and out of consciousness. He saw only fragments. A woman's tired face, a child's small hand clutching her sleeve, the sound of a voice steady even as the world fell apart. In his haze, one thought rose above the rest. Why would someone with nothing save me? Outside, the rain finally eased. Inside, fate tightened its grip. Morning light crept through the high windows of St. Luke's Public General Hospital, pale and unforgiving. Ayanda had not slept. Not really. She had drifted in and out of shallow rest, waking at every cough from Charity, every footstep in the corridor, every change in the beeping machines that guarded the stranger's life. The bench beneath her was hard, but she did not complain. Pain had become familiar, almost expected. What unsettled her was the waiting. Waiting without answers had a way of digging into the soul. Ibrahim stirred beside her, rubbing his eyes. Mama, is he okay? Ayanda looked toward the closed operating room doors. They said he's stable, for now. For now, Ibrahim repeated softly. Charity coughed again, a weak rattling sound. Ayanda tightened her hold and whispered soothing words into her daughter's hair. She could feel how light Charity had become, how her ribs pressed gently against Ayanda's chest. Fear flared again, sharp and hot. A nurse approached, clipboard tucked under her arm. It was Nurse Aisha Soul, the same one who had helped them the night before. Good morning, she said quietly. How is the little one? She's not improving. Ayanda admitted. I don't know what else to do. Aisha nodded slowly. I'll see if the doctor can check on her again. Ayanda bowed her head. Thank you. The nurse hesitated, then glanced toward the operating room. You stayed all night. Ayanda nodded. I didn't want him to wake up alone. Aisha studied her for a moment, then offered a small, tired smile. You're a good woman. Ayanda didn't respond. She wasn't sure she believed that anymore. Hours passed. The hospital grew louder as the day wore on. Relatives argued quietly. Phones rang. Stretchers rolled by. Then finally the doors opened. A doctor stepped out, removing his gloves. The surgery was successful, he announced. He's still critical, but he has a fighting chance. Relief flooded Ayanda so suddenly her legs gave way beneath her. She sat heavily on the bench, tears blurring her vision. Thank God, she whispered. The doctor continued, his tone more cautious now. He'll need to remain under observation. The bills will continue to rise. Ayanda nodded, though her chest tightened. She had already given everything. Later that afternoon, Daniel Tete woke fully for the first time. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the white ceiling above him. The room smelled of disinfectant. Machines hummed softly beside his bed. Pain radiated from his chest, dull but persistent. He turned his head slightly and saw her. Ayanda sat near the wall, Charity asleep across her lap, Ibrahim standing beside her holding a plastic cup of water like it was something precious. Daniel frowned weakly. Where am I? Ayanda stood quickly, startled. You're in the hospital. You collapsed. His brow creased as fragments returned the rain, the woman's voice cutting through the darkness. You, he murmured. You stopped. Ayanda nodded. Yes. Daniel swallowed, throat dry. Why? The question caught her off guard. Why, yes, he said softly. Most people didn't. Ayanda hesitated. Then she answered simply, because you were alive. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or disbelief. He noticed the children then. Your kids, yes, Ayanda replied. I'm Ayanda. This is Ibrahim. And Charity. Daniel looked at Charity, at the way Ayanda's arm curved protectively around her. He exhaled slowly. Daniel, he said. Daniel Tete. The name meant nothing to Ayanda. Later, as the room quieted again, Daniel drifted in and out of sleep. Each time he woke, Ayanda was still there, feeding Charity water, whispering encouragement to Ibrahim, speaking softly to a nurse. No one treated her like family. She was just a woman who had stayed. In the evening, Nurse Aisha returned with a small tray. For the children, she said quietly, and you. Ayanda stared at the food, simple, warm, real. I can't eat, Aisha insisted gently. You need strength too. Ayanda's hands shook as she accepted it. Ibrahim ate slowly, carefully, as if afraid it might disappear. Charity managed a few spoonfuls before coughing again. Daniel watched from his bed, saying nothing. Later that night, Ayanda stepped out into the corridor to pray. She leaned against the wall, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Please, she whispered into the emptiness. I can't lose another person. Not my child. Not him. Please. She didn't know Daniel was awake, listening. When Ayanda returned, she found him watching her. You haven't left, Daniel said quietly. No, she replied. I told you. He studied her face, lined with fatigue yet steady. You have very little, he said. I can see that. Ayanda stiffened. I have my children. Daniel nodded. And still you stayed. Silence stretched between them. Rest, she said finally. You need it. He obeyed, but his mind raced. For years, Daniel Tete had lived surrounded by people who wanted something from him, money, power, influence. Every gesture came with expectation. Every kindness was calculated. This woman didn't know who he was. She had nothing to gain, and yet she had given him everything. The next morning brought harsh reality. A hospital administrator approached Ayanda with a file. We need to discuss the outstanding balance, he said firmly. The ring covered the admission, but ongoing care. Ayanda felt the walls closing in. I don't have anything else. Then you may need to make arrangements, the man said. We can't continue indefinitely. Daniel heard this from his bed. He tried to sit up, pain flaring sharply. Wait, he said hoarsely. The administrator turned. Sir, you should rest. Daniel ignored him and looked at Ayanda. Why didn't you tell them who I am? Ayanda blinked. Who are you? Daniel hesitated. Not yet, not now. Instead, he reached for the call button. Give us a moment, he said. The administrator frowned but stepped outside. Daniel looked at Ayanda, eyes serious despite his weakness. "I will handle this." Ayanda shook her head. "You shouldn't worry about money. Focus on healing." A faint smile tugged at Daniel's lips. "You sound like someone who has never had the luxury of worrying about money." She met his gaze evenly. Money has never saved anyone's soul. Something shifted between them then, an understanding deeper than words. Daniel closed his eyes, overwhelmed not by pain this time, but by something unfamiliar, gratitude. Outside the window, the city moved on, unaware that two broken lives had collided in a hospital room and that neither would ever be the same again. The night came quietly like it always did, without asking permission. Ayanda sat on the edge of the hospital bench, counting the cracks in the tiled floor, because it was easier than counting her fears. Charity slept fitfully against her chest, her small body jerking with every shallow breath. Ibrahim leaned against Ayanda's shoulder, fighting sleep, his eyes red and heavy. "You should rest," he murmured. Ayanda kissed the top of his head. "Close your eyes, my son. I'm here." But rest refused to come. From inside the hospital room, machines hummed steadily, guarding Daniel Teta's fragile life. Ayanda had stepped out to give him space, unaware that the real storm was about to arrive, not from the sky but from the world she could never escape. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, sharp, purposeful. Ayanda looked up and saw a man in a tailored suit approaching. His shoes were polished. His watch gleamed even under the dull hospital lights. He didn't look like someone who belonged in this place of sickness and desperation. He stopped in front of her. "Are you Ayanda Nkosi?" he asked. Ayanda stood slowly. "Yes." The man's eyes flicked briefly to the children, then back to her face. "My name is Kojo Mensah. I'm here regarding the patient in room 214. Ayanda's heart skipped. "Is something wrong?" Kojo smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That depends." He glanced around, lowering his voice. "Daniel Teta is a very important man." Ayanda stiffened. "He's sick." Kojo's smile widened slightly. "Yes, and his affairs need to be managed carefully." Ayanda didn't like the way he said that. "I don't understand," she said. Kojo folded his hands behind his back. "I need to know what you heard, what he said, what he asked." "Nothing," Ayanda replied honestly. "He's been in pain, that's all." Kojo studied her, searching for something, greed perhaps, or leverage. Finding neither, his expression hardened. "You should leave," he said abruptly. Ayanda blinked. "Leave? You've done your part." Kojo continued. "The hospital will handle the rest. Mr. Tete's family will take over." "I'm not family," Ayanda said quietly. "I'm just staying." "That's the problem," Kojo replied sharply. "People like you don't belong in situations like this." Ibrahim stepped forward instinctively. "Don't talk to my mother like that." Kojo looked down at the boy with irritation. "This doesn't concern you." Ayanda placed herself between them. "Please," she said calmly. "We aren't causing trouble." Kojo exhaled slowly, then leaned closer. "Listen to me carefully. You don't want to be involved in things beyond your understanding. Walk away now." Ayanda held his gaze. "I can't." Something dark flashed in Kojo's eyes. "Then you'll regret it." He turned and walked away, leaving behind a chill colder than the hospital walls. Ayanda sank back onto the bench, her hands trembling. "Mama!" "Who was that?" Ibrahim asked. "I don't know," she admitted, "but he's dangerous." Inside room 214, Daniel Teta lay awake. He had heard everything. Kojo Mensah had been his right hand for years. Trusted, loyal, or so Daniel had believed. Hearing his voice now filled with control and quiet threat sent a cold realization through him. Kojo thinks I'm dying, Daniel thought, and he's already taken control. Daniel's fingers curled weakly against the bedsheet. He pressed the call button. Nurse Aisha entered moments later. "Sir, I need you to do something for me," Daniel said softly, quietly. Aisha hesitated, then nodded. "What is it?" "Find my sister," Daniel said. "Naomi Teta. Tell her to come, and don't let Kojo know." Aisha's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "I'll be careful." Later that night, the hospital administrator returned. "We've reviewed the account," he said stiffly to Ayanda. "The balance is increasing. If payment cannot be arranged, the patient may be transferred." Ayanda felt the familiar weight press down on her chest. Transferred where? To a public ward. Or discharged? Discharged. Daniel would die. Ayanda's hands shook as she reached into her pocket. Empty. She had nothing left to give. "I'll find something," she said desperately. "Please, just one more day." The administrator hesitated. "We can't operate on promises." Ayanda closed her eyes. Then she did something she hadn't planned to do. She stood. "I'll leave," she said quietly. "If that's what it takes." The administrator blinked. "Leave, yes," Ayanda repeated. "If my presence is a problem, I'll go." Inside the room, Daniel's heart clenched. He forced himself upright, ignoring the sharp pain that followed. He pressed the call button again, harder this time. "Wait," he said when the administrator entered his room. "She stays." The administrator looked uncomfortable. "Sir, with respect?" "She stays." Daniel repeated, his voice weak but firm. "She's my guest." Ayanda stared at him. "You shouldn't." Daniel met her eyes. "I owe you my life." Silence filled the room. The administrator nodded stiffly and left. Ayanda sat back down, slowly, overwhelmed. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel shook his head faintly. "You've already paid more than enough." That night, Charity's condition worsened. Her cough deepened, her breathing shallow and fast. Ayanda held her, rocking gently, panic rising with every breath. "Mama, it hurts." Charity whimpered. Ayanda's tears fell freely now. "I know, my baby, I know." A doctor examined Charity quickly and frowned. "She needs antibiotics, possibly oxygen." How much, Ayanda asked, already knowing. The amount crushed her. Daniel listened, helpless. "I'll cover it," he said hoarsely. Ayanda shook her head immediately. "No." Daniel frowned. "Why?" "Because I didn't save you to be saved back," she said softly. "I saved you because it was right." Daniel stared at her, stunned. Finally, he said, "Let me help." Ayanda hesitated. Then she nodded once. "For Charity, not for me." The medication was administered. Charity's breathing eased slightly, though exhaustion claimed her soon after. As Ayanda watched her daughter sleep, relief washed over her in shaky waves. Kojo Mensah stood in the shadows of the corridor, watching everything. His jaw tightened. Things were not going as planned, not at all. Daniel Tete drifted in and out of consciousness through the night, suspended in a fragile space between pain and memory. Each time he surfaced, the first thing he noticed was the sound of breathing that was not his own, soft, uneven, childlike. Charity slept on a chair pulled close to his bed, a thin blanket tucked around her shoulders. Ayanda sat beside her, eyes half-lidded, posture rigid with the determination of someone who refused to collapse. In the pale glow of the monitor lights, Daniel watched them. He had woken to rooms like this before, private wards, attentive staff people waiting for instructions. But this was different. No assistants hovered with phones, no board members whispered strategy. There was only a woman who had nothing left to give and had given anyway. Daniel closed his eyes, a memory breaking through the fog. Kojo Mensah's voice, low, controlled. "People like you don't belong in situations like this." Daniel's jaw tightened. He understood now what Kojo had tried to do. While he lay helpless, his trusted aide had begun clearing the path to power, starting with removing the one witness who had no reason to lie. Daniel shifted, wincing. The movement caught Ayanda's attention. "You're awake," she said softly, rising at once. "Yes," he replied, voice rough. "I didn't mean to wake you." Ayanda glanced at Charity, then back at him. "I wasn't sleeping." He smiled faintly. "You should." Later, she said, "How do you feel? Like I've been arguing with death and neither of us wants to admit who's winning." Ayanda let out a small breath, almost a laugh. "You're stubborn." Daniel studied her face. "So are you." She met his gaze, unflinching. "Someone has to be." Silence settled between them, comfortable and strange. Daniel noticed how carefully Ayanda moved, how she conserved energy, how her eyes tracked Charity's chest as it rose and fell. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals with less focus than she gave that small breath. "You didn't have to stay," Daniel said quietly. Ayanda shrugged. "I said I would." "Most people don't mean it. I do." Daniel swallowed, emotion tightening his throat. "You saved me." Ayanda looked away. "I stopped. That's all." He shook his head slowly. "Stopping is everything." A soft knock interrupted them. Dr. Kwame Boateng stepped in, clipboard in hand. He greeted Daniel with a nod, then turned his attention to Charity, listening to her breathing with practiced care. She's responding, he said after a moment. Slowly, but she is. Ayanda exhaled the tension she had been holding, finally easing. Thank you. Dr. Boateng glanced at Daniel. Your recovery will take time. No stress. Daniel almost laughed. I'll try. As the doctor left, Daniel's eyes followed him. You trusted him? Daniel said, more statement than question. Ayanda nodded. He didn't talk down to me. Daniel understood. Respect given freely was rarer than money. Later that morning, Nurse Aisha Soul returned with quiet urgency. She leaned close to Daniel's bed. Your sister is on her way, she whispered. She'll arrive this afternoon. Daniel nodded, relief flickering across his face. Thank you. Ayanda watched the exchange, curiosity stirring. Your family, my sister, Daniel said. Naomi. Ayanda smiled faintly. I hope she finds you well. Daniel hesitated. I hope she finds the truth. Ayanda didn't press. She had learned when silence carried more meaning than questions. By midday, the hospital corridors buzzed with activity. News traveled faster than infection in places like this, and whispers had begun. A well-dressed man collapsed. Surgery performed quietly. A private room guarded without explanation. Kojo Mensah paced near the elevator, his jaw set. He watched staff move with purpose that no longer included him. His calls went unanswered. Doors closed where they once opened. When Naomi Tete arrived, she cut through the ward like a blade. Tall, composed eyes, sharp with worry and anger, braided together. She didn't slow until she reached Daniel's room. Daniel, she breathed, rushing to his side. He smiled weakly. You made it. She took his hand, gripping it tightly. I came as soon as I heard. Kojo said you were stable and didn't need. Daniel's smile faded. Kojo lied. Naomi's eyes hardened. I suspected. Daniel glanced toward Ayanda. This is Ayanda Nkosi. She's the reason I'm alive. Naomi turned, taking in the worn clothes, the tired eyes, the child sleeping nearby. Her gaze softened instantly. Thank you, Naomi said, voice thick. Whatever you need. Ayanda shook her head gently. He's alive. That's enough. Naomi swallowed, deeply moved. It never is, but I understand. Daniel's fingers tightened around Naomi's hand. There's something you need to know. As Daniel spoke, his voice low and steady, Naomi listened about the collapse, the silence, Kojo's visit, the threats. With every word, her expression sharpened. When I was barely conscious, Daniel continued, I heard him trying to push her out, to erase the only witness who didn't want anything from me. Naomi turned slowly toward the door. He's done. Later, Kojo Mensah stood outside the room, trying to mask his agitation as Naomi approached him. Kojo, she said coolly. We need to talk. Of course, he replied, forcing a smile. How is Daniel recovering? Naomi said, which means you'll answer some questions. Kojo's smile slipped. Inside the room, Ayanda felt the air shift. She didn't know the details, but she recognized the feeling, the way truth gathered weight before falling. Ibrahim returned from school that afternoon, eyes lighting up when he saw Charity resting more peacefully. She's better, he whispered. Ayanda nodded. A little. Ibrahim looked at Daniel, then back at his mother. He's still here. Yes, Ayanda said. And he will be. Daniel watched the boy with quiet admiration. You're brave, he said. Ibrahim shrugged. I helped my mother. Daniel's gaze softened. Then you're already a man. As evening approached, Daniel grew tired. Naomi sat beside him, planning quietly. Ayanda prepared to step out, giving them privacy. Stay, Daniel said. Ayanda hesitated. I don't want to intrude. Daniel met her eyes. You belong here. She sat. In that room beneath humming machines and fluorescent lights, something fragile but powerful took shape. Not charity, not obligation, not debt. It was recognition, a shared understanding that life had braided their paths together for a reason neither could yet see. Outside, a crowd glowed with restless energy. Inside, a man who had everything learned what it meant to owe the unpayable. And a woman who had nothing learned that her courage had already begun to echo beyond the walls of a hospital. Kojo Mensah had always believed control came from silence. Silence in meetings, silence in corridors, silence that made people doubt their own instincts. For years, he had mastered it, standing one step behind Daniel Tete, anticipating every move, managing every gate that led to power. When Daniel spoke, Kojo ensured the room listened. When Daniel rested, Kojo decided what the world was allowed to know. But now silence was turning against him. He stood near the nurse's station phone pressed to his ear, voice lowered. "I need access to the files," he hissed. "No, not later now." On the other end, someone murmured an excuse. Kojo's jaw tightened. "You work for me?" he snapped, then caught himself and softened his tone. "I mean, we work together." The call ended without agreement. Kojo lowered the phone and looked down the corridor toward Daniel's room. The door was closed. Inside, Naomi Teda's presence had changed everything. Doors that once opened at his nod now required permission. Staff who once deferred now avoided his eyes. He's not supposed to be awake, Kojo thought. Not yet. Inside the room, Daniel lay back against the pillows, eyes closed, breathing measured. To anyone watching, he looked fragile, recovering dependent, harmless, but his mind was sharp. Naomi sat beside him, a tablet balanced on her lap, reviewing documents Nurse Aisha had quietly delivered. Billing records, visitor logs, internal memos sent while Daniel was unconscious. "Look at this," Naomi whispered, angling the screen toward him. Kojo authorized transfers, emergency powers, temporary he called them. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. Temporary has always been his favorite word. Ayanda sat near the window with Charity asleep against her shoulder, Ibrahim drawing quietly on a scrap of paper. She felt the tension, but didn't intrude. She had learned when to listen with her presence, not her voice. Naomi continued, "He redirected communications, blocked my calls, told the board you were stable but unavailable." Daniel exhaled slowly. "He thought I wouldn't wake up. And if you had died," Naomi said, anger threading her words, "he would have stepped in to protect the company." Daniel opened his eyes and looked at Ayanda. "Did he threaten you?" Ayanda hesitated, then nodded. "He told me to leave, said people like me don't belong." Naomi's eyes flashed. "He doesn't get to decide that." Daniel reached for Ayanda's hand, briefly, gently. "I'm sorry you were pulled into this." Ayanda shook her head. "I'm not sorry I stayed." Later that afternoon, Kojo requested a meeting. Naomi agreed on Daniel's terms. The conference room was small, tucked away from the main wards. Glass walls revealed the hospital corridor beyond a reminder that this was neutral ground. Kojo entered with a practiced smile. "Daniel," he said warmly, "it's good to see you awake." Daniel smiled back, faint but polite. "Kojo, you look busy, only trying to keep things running." Kojo replied smoothly, "You scared us." Daniel gestured to the chair. "Sit." Kojo sat. Naomi didn't. Daniel spoke slowly, choosing each word like a move on a board. "While I was unconscious, decisions were made in my name." Kojo nodded. "Standard protocol, emergency authority." "Emergency authority," Daniel echoed. "Granted to whom?" "To me," Kojo said easily. "By you. Years ago," Naomi interjected, "with conditions, none of which were met." Kojo's smile thinned. "Naomi, let's not turn this into a legal debate." Daniel's gaze sharpened. "Let's." He slid a folder across the table. "Explain these transfers." Kojo didn't touch it. "You were dying," he said quietly. "Someone had to act." Daniel leaned back. "I wasn't dead, but you could have been." Kojo replied, "And the company, your legacy, needed protection." Naomi stepped closer. "You blocked family access. You tried to remove witnesses." Kojo's eyes flicked briefly to the glass wall, then back. "Witnesses to what?" "To the truth," Daniel said. Silence stretched. Kojo's jaw flexed. "You're not thinking clearly." Daniel smiled again, colder this time. "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years." Kojo rose abruptly. "If this is about that woman," "Don't," Naomi warned. Kojo ignored her. "She's a distraction, an emotional variable. You're vulnerable." Daniel stood, swaying slightly but steadying himself against the table. "She is the reason I'm standing." Kojo stared at him, stunned. "You tried to erase her?" Daniel continued. "You underestimated her, and me." Kojo's composure cracked. "I built this with you," he snapped. "I carried your weight. You carried my trust," Daniel replied. "And you dropped it." Security appeared at the door, quiet, firm. Naomi spoke calmly. "Mr. Mensah, your access has been suspended pending investigation." Kojo laughed, sharp and brittle. "You think this ends me?" Daniel met his eyes. "I think it begins the truth." Kojo's gaze slid past Daniel to Ayanda, visible through the glass, rocking her sleeping child. For a moment, something like calculation flickered. As security escorted him out, Kojo leaned close to Naomi. "Be careful," he murmured. "You don't know how deep this goes." Naomi didn't flinch. "Neither do you." When the door closed, Daniel exhaled the effort catching up with him. Naomi guided him back to the bed. "You pushed too hard," she scolded gently. Daniel smiled faintly. "Worth it." Ayanda approached, concern etched on her face. "Are you all right?" "Yes," Daniel said. "Better than I was." That evening, whispers spread. Staff spoke in low tones. Phones buzzed. A powerful man had stumbled. A patient had woken. A story had shifted direction. Nurse Aisha slipped into the room with news. "Internal audit is underway," she said softly. "Board members are arriving tomorrow." Naomi nodded. "Good." Night fell again, heavy and watchful. Ayanda sat with Ibrahim, helping him practice reading by the dim light. Charity slept more peacefully now, her breaths deeper. Daniel watched them, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest. "Why did you really stay?" he asked Ayanda quietly. She looked up. "Because leaving would have followed me forever." Daniel nodded. "Then staying will follow you too." She smiled sadly. "I don't need it to." He did. Outside the room, Kojo Mensah stood alone near the exit, rain tapping against the glass, his phone buzzed messages, unanswered alliances wavering. For the first time in years, he felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Inside, a different kind of power was taking shape, quiet, unannounced, undeniable, and the night held its breath, waiting for what truth would claim next. The next morning arrived with an unfamiliar stillness. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that comes when something is about to break. Ayanda sensed it the moment she stepped into the corridor. Voices were lower, movements more deliberate. People glanced toward Daniel's room, then away, as if the walls themselves were listening. Inside, Daniel sat propped up against his pillows, pale but alert. Naomi stood near the window phone, pressed to her ear, her expression tight. "They're here," she said quietly when she ended the call. Daniel nodded once. "I expected them." Ayanda shifted Charity gently in her arms. "Who's here?" Naomi turned to her. "The board. And legal." Ayanda swallowed. The words sounded heavy. "Dangerous. Does that mean trouble?" Daniel met her eyes. "It means truth." Before Ayanda could respond, the door opened. 3 men and 1 woman entered, well-dressed, composed, their presence filling the small room with invisible pressure. They introduced themselves politely, but their eyes scanned everything. The machines, the charts, the children. Ayanda. One of them, an older man with silver hair, spoke first. "Mr. Tedda, we're relieved to see you conscious." Daniel inclined his head. "I'm relieved to be alive." A beat passed. "We need to discuss several urgent matters," the woman said. "Decisions were made during your incapacitation." Daniel gestured to the chairs. "Sit." They did. Naomi remained standing. The conversation unfolded carefully at first. Financial safeguards, temporary authorizations, miscommunications. Kojo Mensah's name surfaced repeatedly, each time weighed down with new implications. Daniel listened without interrupting. Then the silver-haired man cleared his throat. "There is also the matter of liability." Ayanda felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Liability?" Daniel asked. "Yes," the man continued. "Your collapse occurred in public. There are witnesses. The company must assess risk." Daniel's eyes flicked briefly to Ayanda, then back. "Go on." "It would be advisable," the woman said carefully, "to formalize statements. Clarify who was involved, who assumed responsibility." Ayanda's chest tightened. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "You're asking me to distance myself from the person who saved my life." No one answered immediately. "That's not what we're saying," the silver-haired man replied, "but association can complicate matters." Ayanda rose instinctively. "I don't want to cause problems," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I didn't ask for anything." The woman looked at her, surprised by the calm strength in her tone. "We understand. This is procedural." Daniel's voice sharpened. "Procedures don't erase conscience." Silence fell. Then Daniel did something none of them expected. He reached out and took Ayanda's hand. "This woman," he said, "gave up the last thing of value she owned to keep me alive. She slept on a hospital bench so I wouldn't wake up alone. She trusted me without knowing my name." The board members exchanged glances. "If there is liability," Daniel continued, "then I claim it. Fully." Naomi smiled faintly. The silver-haired man sighed. "Very well. But there's another matter." He slid a document across the table. "A consent form," he explained. "Your condition remains unstable. There is a possibility of further complications." "Should that happen?" Ayanda felt her stomach drop. Daniel read the document slowly. His face remained composed, but his grip tightened. "It's asking me to sign away decision-making authority," he said quietly, "in case I'm unable." "Yes," the woman confirmed. Standard precaution. Daniel closed the folder. "No," he said. The board members stiffened. "Daniel, no," he repeated. "Not to Kojo, not to anyone who saw me as already gone." The silver-haired man hesitated, then to whom Daniel looked at Naomi. Then unexpectedly at Ayanda. Ayanda froze. Naomi's eyes widened. "Daniel, I'm not talking about business," Daniel said calmly. "I'm talking about my person, my care, my choices." Ayanda shook her head quickly. "I'm not qualified. I don't understand these things." Daniel smiled gently. "You understand life." The room held its breath. "This is not permanent," Daniel added. "It's symbolic and temporary. If something happens, I want someone who values life, not leverage speaking for me." Ayanda's eyes filled with tears. "Why me?" "Because when I couldn't speak," Daniel said softly, "you did the right thing anyway." Naomi stepped closer, her voice measured. "If that is Daniel's wish, I support it." The board members exchanged another look, reluctant, uneasy, but bound. The woman nodded. "Then we'll prepare an alternative document." As they left, the air in the room shifted lighter but charged. Ayanda sank back into her chair, hands trembling. "I didn't mean to be part of this." Daniel reached for her hand again, steadying her. "You already were, the moment you stopped." Later that afternoon, Charity's fever spiked. Ayanda noticed it immediately, the warmth, the shallow breaths, the way Charity whimpered even in sleep. Panic surged. She rushed to the nurse's station. "Please, something's wrong." Doctors responded quickly, surrounding Charity with quiet urgency. Tests were ordered, oxygen administered. Ayanda stood pressed against the wall, her heart pounding louder than any machine. Daniel watched helplessly from his bed. After what felt like hours, Dr. Boateng approached. "She has an infection that's resisting the first medication," he said gently. "We need a stronger course, immediately." Ayanda nodded, already reaching for words she hated saying. "How much?" The amount landed like a blow. Daniel closed his eyes. Ayanda didn't wait. "I'll sign whatever you need," she said. "Just help her." The doctor hesitated. "There are risks." "I understand." Inside the room, Daniel's chest tightened painfully, not from his condition, but from the sight of her choosing again. Choosing risk. Choosing cost. Choosing life. The treatment began. Ayanda sat beside Charity through the night, whispering stories, prayers, promises. Ibrahim curled up nearby, his small hand gripping his sister's blanket. Daniel didn't sleep. He watched Ayanda's face in the dim light, exhausted, fierce, unyielding. At dawn, Charity's breathing steadied. Ayanda sagged with relief, tears streaming freely now. Dr. Boateng nodded. "She's responding." Ayanda pressed her forehead to the bed. "Thank you." Daniel exhaled slowly, emotion washing over him in a wave he couldn't control. In that moment, the choice became clear. Not the legal one. Not the financial one, the human one. Daniel Teta had built an empire on strategy and foresight. But lying there, watching a woman with nothing give everything again, he understood something he never had before. Power wasn't what you controlled, it was what you protected, and Ayanda Nkosi had protected life without knowing who was watching. The crisis passed quietly, the way the most important moments often did not, with celebration, but with breath returning to rhythm. Charity slept deeply now, her small chest resenting and falling in a steady pattern that felt like a miracle Ayanda was afraid to believe in too fully. She sat beside the bed, fingers resting lightly on her daughter's arm, as if afraid the calm might break if she moved too much. Ibrahim leaned against the wall nearby, eyes heavy but alert. He watched his sister the way a guard watches a gate. "She's breathing better," he whispered. Ayanda nodded. "Yes, thank God." Across the room, Daniel Teta lay awake, his gaze fixed not on machines or charts, but on the small family gathered together. He had watched empires rise and fall from glass offices high above the city. None of that compared to the quiet strength in this room. Naomi returned shortly after sunrise, her steps brisk, her face composed. But when she saw Charity sleeping peacefully, her shoulders relaxed for the first time in hours. "She's stable?" Naomi asked softly. "Yes," Ayanda replied. "They say she's responding." Naomi exhaled. "Good." She turned to Daniel. The audit has begun. Daniel nodded, and Kojo Naomi's expression hardened, contained, for now. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Good. As the morning wore on, hospital staff rotated in and out, checking vitals, adjusting drips, murmuring updates. The room felt calmer, but beneath the surface, Ayanda felt a strange unease she couldn't name. It came to her in fragments, the way staff looked at her now, with curiosity, with recognition, the way Daniel's name traveled through the corridors, suddenly spoken aloud instead of whispered. She finally asked the question she had been avoiding. "Daniel," she said quietly, "what do you do?" He opened his eyes and met her gaze. "I run a company." Ayanda nodded slowly. "A big one?" "Yes." She didn't ask more. She didn't need details. She could feel the weight of it already pressing in around them. Later that day, Nurse Aisha pulled Ayanda aside. "You should know," she said gently. "People are talking." Ayanda's heart skipped. "About what?" "About you," Aisha replied. "About how you stayed, about what you gave." Ayanda looked down. "I didn't do it to be seen." "I know," Aisha said. "That's why it matters." In the afternoon, a social worker arrived, clipboard in hand, smile practiced. "I'm here to discuss your situation," she said politely. "Housing, support." Ayanda stiffened. "Why?" The woman glanced toward Daniel's room. "Because of your connection to Mr. Teta." Ayanda felt the unease sharpen. "I don't have a connection. I just helped." The social worker smiled thinly. "Help like that doesn't go unnoticed." Ayanda thanked her and sent her away. That evening, Daniel asked to speak with Ayanda alone. Naomi escorted Ibrahim out to get food, promising to keep an eye on Charity. When the door closed, the room felt smaller. "You're worried," Daniel said. Ayanda hesitated. "I don't want trouble." "You won't have it," Daniel replied. "Not from me." She looked at him, eyes tired. "People don't help people like me without expecting something." Daniel didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. "I don't expect repayment." Ayanda shook her head. "That's what scares me." Daniel smiled faintly. "You're afraid of being owned." She met his gaze. "Yes." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then let me be clear." He shifted slightly, wincing but continuing. "I won't make you a symbol. I won't parade you as proof of my generosity, and I won't tie your future to my gratitude." Ayanda studied his face, searching for cracks. Finding none, she whispered, "Then why are you still helping?" Daniel thought of the night on the road, the rain. The wallet she returned to his pocket without a glance. "Because he said simply, 'You reminded me who I am when no one is watching.'" Tears welled in Ayanda's eyes before she could stop them. She wiped them away quickly. "I just want my children safe." "They will be," Daniel said, "but on your terms." The next day, Charity was cleared to leave intensive care. The relief in Ayanda's chest was so strong it left her dizzy. Ibrahim grinned for the first time in days. "She's going to be okay," he said. "Yes," Ayanda replied, voice thick. "She is." But as they prepared to move Charity to a general ward, reality returned. A hospital administrator approached. "We'll need to discuss discharge arrangements." Ayanda nodded. "I understand." The man cleared his throat. "There are costs." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Send them to me." Ayanda turned sharply. "Daniel!" He raised a hand. "This is not charity. It's responsibility." She hesitated. "For what?" "For allowing you to give everything without rest," he replied. "For letting this go on too long." Ayanda looked away, conflicted. That evening, as Charity slept and Ibrahim read quietly, Naomi returned with news that shifted everything again. "The board has voted," she said to Daniel. "Kojo is officially suspended pending investigation." Daniel nodded. "Good." Naomi's eyes moved to Ayanda. "And there's something else." Ayanda stiffened. What Naomi hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Media interest is growing. Someone leaked that a poor widow saved a dying billionaire." Ayanda's heart dropped. "I don't want that. I know," Naomi said. "We're blocking names, locations, for now." Ayanda pressed her palms together, grounding herself. "Please, I don't want my children exposed." Daniel's voice was firm. "They won't be." Later that night, Ayanda stood alone at the hospital window, looking out at Accra's lights. For years, the city had been something she survived. Now it felt like something watching her. Daniel joined her, moving slowly. "You're standing at a crossroads," he said quietly. Ayanda nodded. "I didn't choose it." "No," Daniel agreed. "But you can choose how to walk it." She turned to him. "I don't want to lose myself." Daniel met her gaze. "You won't." Not if you lead. Ayanda looked back out at the city. She thought of the room they had been locked out of, the bench they had slept on, the rain. She thought of stopping. Then, "Promise me something," she said. "Anything," Daniel replied. "Don't save us," Ayanda said softly. "Stand with us." Daniel nodded. "I can do that." In the quiet that followed, something settled into place, not an agreement written on paper, but one etched deeper. For the first time in a long while, Ayanda allowed herself to believe that tomorrow might hold more than survival. The knock came after sunset. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. In a hospital, every sound carried weight, and this one landed squarely in Ayanda's chest before the door even opened. Naomi was the first to look up. Daniel sensed it too, the subtle tightening in her shoulders, the way her eyes sharpened. Two uniformed men stood in the doorway, flanked by a hospital administrator Ayanda recognized. His face was polite, but his posture was rigid. "Mrs. Nkosi," the administrator said, clearing his throat. "We need to speak with you." Ayanda rose slowly. "Is something wrong with my daughter?" "No," he replied quickly. "This is about your accommodation." Ayanda's breath caught. "Accommodation?" The administrator glanced at the officers, then back at her. "We've received a report. It appears you no longer have a registered place of residence." The words felt unreal, like a language spoken through water. "We were locked out," Ayanda said carefully. "Our landlord—" "Yes," the administrator interrupted, "which means you and your children are currently without legal housing." Ibrahim stepped closer to his mother. Mama Ayanda placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "It's all right." One of the officers spoke up, his tone not unkind but firm. "We're required to inform social services in situations like this, especially involving minors." Ayanda's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Are you saying you'll take my children?" "No," the officer said. "Not unless there's cause." Daniel pushed himself upright. "This is unnecessary," he said sharply. "They are with me." The administrator shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, sir, that's not a formal arrangement." Ayanda felt the walls closing in. The hospital that had felt like refuge suddenly seemed fragile. Naomi stepped forward. "Give us a moment," she said coolly. "Please." After a tense pause, the administrator nodded and led the officers a few steps away. Ayanda sank back into her chair, shaking. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't think Daniel reached for her hand." "You didn't do anything wrong. I should have planned." Ayanda said, tears spilling now. "I should have found somewhere. Anything." Naomi knelt in front of her. "Ayanda, listen to me. This doesn't mean what you think it means." Ayanda shook her head. "Everything I touch falls apart." Daniel's voice cut through her despair. "That's not true. Look at your daughter." Charity slept peacefully, unaware of the danger circling her family. Naomi stood and turned back toward the administrator. "We're arranging temporary housing immediately," she said. "This situation will be resolved." The administrator frowned. "We'll need documentation." "You'll have it," Naomi replied. "Tonight." As the officers left, Ayanda felt no relief, only exhaustion, the kind that seeped into bones and made even breathing feel heavy. That night she couldn't sleep. The hospital lights dimmed, but fear kept her awake. She sat by Charity's bed, counting breaths, replaying the officer's words over and over. Social services. The word echoed like a threat. She remembered her own childhood, how quickly children could disappear into systems that promised protection and delivered distance. She pressed her lips to Charity's forehead, whispering a prayer. Across the room, Daniel watched her silently. Near midnight, he spoke. "Ayanda." She looked up, startled. "Yes." "You're not losing your children," he said firmly. She shook her head. "You can't promise that." "I can," he replied. "Not because of my money, because of my voice." Ayanda's eyes filled again. "I don't want to owe you." Daniel met her gaze. "You don't." He shifted, wincing slightly, then continued. "Tomorrow I'll be discharged to a private residence. There's space, security, stability." Ayanda stiffened. "No." "Listen to me," Daniel said gently, "not as a benefactor. As someone who understands what it means to have nowhere to land." She shook her head harder. "People will talk. They already are. They'll talk no matter what," Daniel replied, "but they won't decide your future." Ayanda looked at him, torn between fear and reason. "I don't want my children to think this is normal." Daniel smiled sadly. "Then let them think it's temporary. Because it is." Morning came too quickly. Naomi returned early with documents in hand. Temporary housing secured, she announced. Discreet, protected, no press. Ayanda stared at the papers. Where Naomi hesitated, one of Daniel's guest residences. Ayanda looked away. I said no. Daniel spoke quietly, then proposed an alternative. Ayanda opened her mouth, then closed it. She had none. Ibrahim tugged at her sleeve. Mama, we don't have a home. The words broke something open inside her. Ayanda closed her eyes. Just until we find something, she whispered. Just until Daniel agreed. That afternoon, Charity was cleared for discharge. Nurse Aisha hugged Ayanda gently. You're strong, she said. Stronger than you know. Ayanda managed a small smile. I don't feel it. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Ayanda paused at the doorway. She looked back at the room where everything had changed: the bench, the machines, the window. She had come here with nothing. She was leaving with something fragile and frightening. Hope. The car ride was quiet. Ibrahim watched the city pass by, eyes wide. Charity slept, her head resting against Ayanda's shoulder. They arrived at the residence just as dusk settled, a modest but secure house tucked away from the main road. Nothing extravagant, clean, safe. Ayanda stepped inside cautiously. This is too much, she murmured. Daniel shook his head. It's enough. That night, Ayanda lay awake in a real bed for the first time in weeks. Charity slept beside her, breathing evenly. Ibrahim had already drifted off in the next room. But sleep didn't come. Instead, doubt did. She wondered how long this calm would last, how quickly the world would demand repayment, how easily things given could be taken away. In the living room, Daniel sat alone, staring out at the darkened street. Naomi joined him quietly. You did the right thing. Daniel nodded. I know. You're changing the rules, Naomi said. People won't like it. Daniel smiled faintly. Then they can learn. In the silence that followed, one truth stood clear. The storm hadn't passed. It had only shifted, and tomorrow the world would come knocking again. Morning arrived gently, but the world outside had not softened. Ayanda woke before the children, lying still and listening. The house breathed differently than the room they had known. No dripping roof, no neighbors arguing through thin walls, no fear pressing against every sound. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt temporary, like borrowed time. She rose quietly and padded into the kitchen. The cupboards were stocked. Clean cups waited on the counter. A kettle sat ready, heavy and solid in her hands. Ayanda paused, fingers tightening around the handle. Don't get used to this, she told herself. From the doorway, Daniel watched her without announcing his presence. You didn't sleep, he said. Ayanda turned, startled. I did. A little. He smiled faintly. Lies sound different in quiet houses. She almost smiled back, then caught herself. The children needed rest. So did you. Ayanda shrugged. Mothers adjust. Later that morning, Naomi arrived with news that pulled the quiet apart. The board is meeting publicly today, she said, removing her jacket. They want clarity, closure. Daniel nodded, and Kojo Naomi's eyes hardened. He's been detained for questioning, financial irregularities, obstruction, intimidation. Ayanda's chest tightened. Because of me? Because of himself. Naomi replied firmly. You were just the mirror. Ayanda didn't know how to respond to that. By midday, the news spread beyond boardrooms and hospital corridors. Phones buzzed, headlines formed before facts could catch up. A powerful man collapses, a quiet recovery, a betrayal exposed, and at the center of it all, an unnamed woman and 2 children. Ayanda felt it like pressure behind her eyes. She went to check on Charity, who was sitting at the table, drawing. Her color returned slowly but surely. Ibrahim hovered nearby, reading aloud softly. Mama, Charity said, looking up. Can I go outside later? Ayanda knelt beside her. Not today. We'll stay close. Charity nodded, accepting the answer with the resilience only children had. When Daniel left for the board meeting, the house felt heavier without him. Naomi stayed behind, aware of the tension winding through Ayanda like a tight thread. You're afraid, Naomi said gently. Ayanda didn't deny it. I don't want to be the story. Naomi nodded. Stories find people whether they want them or not. The question is whether you let them define you. Ayanda sighed. I just want my children safe. They will be, Naomi said, but safety sometimes means being seen. At the board meeting, Daniel faced the room alone. The chairs were filled, faces familiar, others newly cautious. The air smelled of polished wood and ambition. Daniel stood steady despite the pain that lingered beneath his composure. "I'm here to address what happened," he began, "and what will happen next." A murmur rippled through the room. He spoke of the collapse, the silence, the hospital. He spoke of trust misplaced and power abused. He named Kojo without anger, only clarity. Then he said the thing no one expected. "I am alive because a woman with nothing chose to stop." The room stilled. She did not ask who I was. She did not ask what she would gain. She paid with the last thing she owned and stayed when leaving would have been easier. Some faces shifted. Others looked away. "I won't allow this company to erase that," Daniel continued, "nor will I allow it to use her." A hand rose. "Are you proposing?" "I'm proposing a standard," Daniel said calmly. "If our success depends on silence, intimidation, and convenience, then we've already failed." The vote followed swiftly. Kojo was removed. Protections were put in place. The board committed to transparency not as a slogan, but as policy. When Daniel returned to the residence, dusk was settling again. Ayanda stood at the window watching the street. "It's done," he said quietly. She turned. "What does that mean for us?" "It means the truth is out," Daniel replied, "and that I intend to honor it without spectacle." Ayanda searched his face. "How?" "By giving you choices," he said, "real ones." They sat at the table together. Naomi listened as Daniel laid out options, not demands. Temporary work arrangements, education support, medical coverage, legal protection. Ayanda absorbed it slowly. "I don't want to be dependent," she said finally. Daniel nodded. "Then, don't be. Choose what helps you stand." She thought of the market, of Mama Zanelli, of hands that gave when they had little. "I want to work," Ayanda said. "On my feet, with my hands." Daniel smiled. "We can arrange that. And schooling for Ibrahim," she added. "Not favors, scholarships." Naomi nodded. "Done." Ayanda's voice softened. "And nothing public, no cameras." Daniel's smile faded into seriousness. "Agreed." That night the children slept soundly. Ayanda sat alone in the living room, the house quiet around her. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she had memorized long ago. "Mama Zanelli," she said softly. A pause. Then relief. "Ayanda. Are you all right?" "Yes." Ayanda replied. "I am, and I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For stopping for me." The next day a letter arrived at the residence, simple, unmarked. Ayanda opened it with trembling hands. It was from the hospital administrator. "Your balance has been settled in full. No further action required." Ayanda closed her eyes, breath catching. Later that afternoon, she walked the children to a nearby park under discreet watch. Charity laughed as she pushed a swing gently. Ibrahim ran ahead free in a way Ayanda hadn't seen in months. Daniel watched from a distance, careful not to intrude. Naomi joined him. "She's strong," she said. Daniel nodded. "Stronger than most people I know." "Careful," Naomi added. "Strength attracts storms." Daniel smiled. "So does light." As the sun dipped low, Ayanda gathered the children and headed home. She paused at the gate and turned back. "Daniel," she said. "Yes." "Thank you for standing with us." He inclined his head. "For reminding me how." That night, as the city settled into sleep, the story shifted again, not with headlines or applause, but with something quieter and more lasting. Dignity reclaimed, and a promise unspoken but real that kindness once seen could no longer be undone. Ayanda's first day of work began before dawn, just like the old days. But this time the feeling was different. She stood in the small courtyard behind a community food center on the edge of Accra, tying the strings of her apron with steady hands. The air smelled of charcoal and early rain. Around her, women moved with practiced ease, washing vegetables, stirring pots, greeting one another with quiet laughter that rose and fell like breath. No cameras, no titles, no special treatment, exactly as Ayanda had asked. The program had been Daniel's suggestion, but the structure was hers. A cooperative kitchen that provided meals to low-income families while creating paid work for widows and single mothers. Nothing extravagant, just dignity measured in honest hours and shared effort. Mama Zanelli was there too. When she saw Ayanda, her eyes widened. "My child," she said, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "I knew God hadn't forgotten you." Ayanda laughed softly, tears pricking her eyes. "He used your hands first." Mama Zanelli clicked her tongue. "He always does." Ayanda set to work without ceremony. She washed rice-chopped onions, stirred stew until her arms ached. The ache felt good, familiar, earned. At midday, she wiped her brow and stepped outside for air. Her phone vibrated, a message from Naomi. "How's the first day?" Ayanda smiled as she typed back. Busy, tired, happy. Across the city, Daniel read the message from the back seat of his car. He smiled faintly, then put the phone away as the vehicle pulled up to Tete Global Holdings. The building still looked the same, glass and steel, sharp edges catching the sun, but something inside Daniel had shifted. He walked through the lobby differently now, noticing faces he had once passed without seeing. Guards nodded, assistants straightened, the machine continued to hum, but he no longer mistook motion for meaning. At school, Ibrahim sat at a new desk, his books crisp as uniform, clean but modest. He kept his head down, listening closely, absorbing every word like it might disappear if he blinked. When the teacher asked him to read aloud, his voice trembled at first, then steadied. After class, a boy leaned over. "Where did you come from?" Ibrahim hesitated. Then he said simply, "Here." The boy nodded. "You read well." Ibrahim smiled, a small, proud thing. Charity's days were quieter. Ayanda walked her to the clinic for follow-up visits where nurses smiled and doctors spoke gently. The coughing faded. The shadows under her eyes lifted. She began to run again, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. "Mama," she said one afternoon, skipping ahead on the path, "can we go to the park again, yes?" Ayanda replied, her voice light. "We can." That evening, Daniel visited the residence not as a benefactor but as a guest. He sat at the table while Ayanda served a simple meal she had cooked herself. No staff hovered, no formalities intruded. "This is good," he said sincerely. Ayanda raised an eyebrow. "It's just stew." Daniel smiled. "It's more than that." They ate in companionable silence. Later, as the children played quietly, Daniel spoke. "I wanted to check in," he said. "Make sure the arrangements still feel right." Ayanda nodded. "They do. For now." "For now," Daniel echoed. "When you're ready, we can revisit housing options. Something permanent." Ayanda considered it. "I want to earn it." Daniel inclined his head. "Then we'll plan accordingly." A pause followed, comfortable, thoughtful. "I've been offered interviews," Daniel added. "I've declined." Ayanda looked up. "Thank you. I meant what I said," he replied. No spectacle. The days settled into rhythm. Ayanda worked. Ibrahim studied. Charity healed. But change, even gentle change, had a way of drawing attention. One afternoon, as Ayanda closed the kitchen, a woman approached her hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you the one who helped Mr. Tete?" Ayanda stiffened. "I helped a man," she replied. "That's all." The woman nodded, embarrassed. "My sister is sick. People say, if you speak to him." Ayanda's chest tightened. "I don't speak for him," she said gently, "but I can tell you where to find help." She wrote down the clinic's address, the cooperative's hours, the names of people who listened. As the woman left, Ayanda felt the weight settle again, not of debt but of expectation. That night she spoke to Daniel. "They're starting to look at me like a door," she said quietly. "I don't want to be that." Daniel listened carefully. "Then don't be." "How?" Ayanda asked. "By doing exactly what you're doing," he replied. "Pointing people toward systems, not yourself." She nodded slowly. "I can do that." At the end of the week, Naomi visited the cooperative. She stood back observing, as Ayanda worked alongside the others, laughing, when a pot boiled over steady when a delivery ran late. "She's not pretending," Naomi said to Daniel later. "This isn't performance." Daniel smiled. "That's why it lasts." Still, not everyone was pleased. A former associate of Kojo's leaked a distorted version of events online, half-truths wrapped in resentment. Comments swirled, speculation flared. Ayanda saw none of it. She didn't read the headlines. But Ibrahim did. One afternoon he came home quieter than usual. "Mama," he said, hesitating, "they said your name at school." Ayanda's heart clenched. "What did they say?" "That you're famous." Ayanda knelt in front of him. "And what do you think?" Ibrahim considered. "I think you work hard." Ayanda hugged him tightly. "That's enough." Daniel addressed the issue the next morning, not publicly but precisely. False narratives were corrected, names were protected, boundaries reinforced. No grand statements, just action. Weeks passed. Ayanda saved, slowly, carefully. Each coin felt like a brick laid in the foundation of something real. One evening she stood in the small room she now rented, humble, clean hers. The children unpacked boxes, laughing as they rediscovered familiar things. "This is our home?" Charity asked. Yes, Ayanda said, emotion thick in her throat. It is, Daniel visited later, standing at the doorway. Congratulations, Ayanda smiled. Thank you, for the bridge, for crossing it yourself, he replied. They stood together for a moment, not as rescuer and rescued, but as two people who had chosen differently and changed because of it. Outside, Accra pulsed with life. Inside, a quiet victory took root, not the kind that fades with applause, the kind that grows. Justice did not arrive loudly. It came in sealed envelopes, quiet courtrooms, and decisions read in calm official voices that left no room for argument. Ayanda first heard about Kojo Mensah's arrest from Naomi, who called one evening while Ayanda was washing dishes in their new home. Charity was humming softly in the other room, coloring, while Ibrahim read aloud to himself at the table. They've charged him, Naomi said simply. Ayanda's hand stilled in the water. With what fraud? Coercion, abuse of authority, Naomi replied, and intimidation. Ayanda closed her eyes briefly. She didn't feel triumph, only a strange release, like a knot she hadn't realized she was carrying had finally loosened. I hope no one else was hurt, Ayanda said. Naomi exhaled. Some people were scared, some were silenced, but they're speaking now. When the call ended, Ayanda dried her hands and went to sit beside her children. Ibrahim looked up at her face and immediately noticed the shift. Something happened, he said. Ayanda nodded. Someone who made bad choices is being held responsible. Ibrahim thought for a moment. That's good. Yes, Ayanda said. It is. News traveled quickly through Accra, but it did not linger where Ayanda lived. The cooperative continued its work. The kitchen opened on time. The meals went out. People came hungry and left fed. But another reckoning was unfolding closer to home. Mr. Joseph Mbeki stood outside the settlement where he once held keys like weapons. Notices were pasted on the gate. Creditors arrived. Tenants whispered. Within weeks, his properties were seized for unpaid taxes and illegal evictions. The locks he had used to shut others out were cut open by officials. One afternoon, Mama Zanelli returned from the market with the news, her face tight with disbelief. They took everything she said, the houses, the land. Ayanda nodded slowly. He took too much from others. He begged, Mama Zanelli added quietly, asked for mercy. Ayanda said nothing for a long moment. Then she replied, mercy should be learned before power. The days that followed were filled with small victories. Charity's final test results came back clear. The doctor smiled as he handed Ayanda the paper. She's strong, he said. Children like her bounce back. Ayanda pressed the paper to her chest as if it might vanish. Thank you. Charity ran ahead on the way home, laughter trailing behind her like music. At school, Ibrahim was invited to join a reading club. The teacher pulled Ayanda aside one afternoon, her voice warm. He has focus, she said, and empathy. He listens. Ayanda felt pride rise quietly. He had to grow up early. The teacher nodded. He doesn't act old, he acts grounded. Daniel watched all of this from a respectful distance. He attended court hearings with Naomi not as spectacle but as witness. He signed documents that dismantled what Kojo had built in shadow. He made restitution where harm had been done, and then one morning he visited Ayanda with an envelope. I wanted you to see this, he said, handing it to her. Inside was a letter official precise. Teta Global Holdings had established a permanent fund for emergency medical access at St. Luke's Public General Hospital. No naming rights, no plaques. Ayanda looked up, startled. Why show me this? Daniel met her gaze. Because it started with you, and because I want your counsel. My counsel, Ayanda echoed. You understand need without turning it into control, Daniel said. I want the fund to reflect that. Ayanda considered the letter carefully. Then make it simple, she said. And invisible. Let the help arrive before the questions. Daniel smiled. Done. As weeks turned into months, the noise around their story faded. New scandals took its place. New heroes were crowned and forgotten. Ayanda didn't mind. She woke early. She worked. She saved. She laughed with her children. On Sundays, they visited Mama Zanelli, sharing meals and stories. One evening, Ayanda found Ibrahim sitting quietly on the steps, staring at the street. What are you thinking about? She asked, sitting beside him. He hesitated. Do you think people can change, Ayanda? Considered the question carefully. Some do, she said, when they choose to. Ibrahim nodded. I want to choose right. Ayanda smiled. You already are. That same night, Daniel stood on his balcony, looking out over the city he had once ruled from a distance. Naomi joined him, folding her arms against the cool air. You've lost allies, she said. Daniel nodded. I've gained clarity. Naomi smiled faintly. That's expensive. I can afford it, he replied. In a small community hall not far away, Ayanda attended a meeting of the cooperative. Women shared updates. Plans were made. A new delivery route approved. When the meeting ended, one of the women pulled Ayanda aside. People listen to you, she said. You should lead. Ayanda shook her head. I already am from where I stand. The woman smiled. That's leadership. As the rainy season returned, Ayanda stood at her window one evening watching drops streak down the glass. She remembered another rain, another road, a man on the ground. Daniel joined her quietly. Storms feel different now, he said. Ayanda nodded. They pass. He turned to her. I've been offered an award. Ayanda raised an eyebrow. And I declined, Daniel said. I told them to give it to the hospital staff. Ayanda smiled. Good. They stood together in comfortable silence. Justice had been served not with spectacle but with restoration, not with revenge but with responsibility, and in the spaces left behind by power misused, something steadier had taken root: trust. The morning Ayanda realized her life had truly changed did not arrive with noise or celebration. It arrived quietly, like most things that mattered. She was standing in the small kitchen of their home, stirring a pot of porridge, while Charity sat at the table practicing her letters, and Ibrahim packed his school bag. The radio played softly in the background, a familiar tune that spoke of patience and harvest. For the first time in a long while, Ayanda was not rushing. She paused, spoon in hand, and noticed it. Her chest was calm, not guarded, not braced for bad news. Just calm. Mama Charity said, holding up her notebook. Is this right? Ayanda leaned over, correcting a letter gently. Yes, very good. Ibrahim zipped his bag and slung it over his shoulder. I'll be late today. Reading club. Ayanda smiled. I know. When the door closed behind them, Ayanda stood alone in the quiet house and let herself breathe. Later that day, Daniel Teta arrived without announcement, as he often did now. Not with security. Not with formality. Just Daniel wearing a simple shirt sleeves rolled up, carrying a small box. I brought something, he said. Ayanda raised an eyebrow. Food or trouble? Daniel smiled. Neither. Memories. They sat at the table as Daniel opened the box. Inside were photographs printed old-fashioned, not glossy press images, but personal ones. Daniel as a younger man standing beside his mother. Daniel with Naomi laughing. Daniel alone in places that looked impressive but empty. I used to think success meant distance, Daniel said quietly. From need. From vulnerability. Ayanda listened without interrupting. When I collapsed that night, he continued, I realized how alone I'd made myself. Power gave me access, not presence. Ayanda nodded. People confuse the two. Daniel met her eyes. You didn't. There was a long silence between them, not awkward, full. I'm not here to offer you anything today, Daniel said finally. No plans. No proposals. Ayanda smiled softly. Good. I'm here to say thank you, he continued. Not as a debtor, as a man who was changed. Ayanda's throat tightened. I didn't change you. Daniel shook his head. You reminded me. That afternoon they walked together to the cooperative kitchen. Ayanda greeted the women, checked supplies, laughed when someone teased her about stirring too slowly. Daniel stayed back observing. One of the women whispered to him. She never acts important, Daniel replied quietly. That's because she is. As weeks passed, life continued to unfold, not dramatically but steadily. Ayanda expanded her hours at the cooperative. The women elected her to coordinate schedules, not because of her story, but because she listened, because she showed up, because she worked alongside them. Ibrahim's confidence grew. He began helping younger students read his voice, patient as posture, calm. When asked what he wanted to be, he answered simply, useful. Charity started school. On her first day, she clutched Ayanda's hand tightly, eyes wide. Will you come back? She asked. Ayanda knelt in front of her, always. Charity smiled and walked through the gate without looking back. Daniel watched from a distance, hands in his pockets. Naomi stood beside him. You know, Naomi said people keep asking if this is a charity story or a redemption story. Daniel smiled faintly. It's neither. What is it then? It's a responsibility story, Daniel replied. She showed me what I owed the world, not money, attention. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ayanda invited Daniel for dinner, not as a guest of honor, as family. They ate together simple food, shared stories. Ibrahim spoke animatedly about a book he was reading. Charity interrupted, often proudly announcing every new word she had learned. Daniel listened more than he spoke. At the end of the meal, Charity climbed onto Daniel's lap without hesitation and wrapped her arms around his neck. "You smell like books," she declared. Daniel laughed, surprised. "I'll take that as a compliment." Ayanda watched the moment with quiet reflection. Not possessive, not fearful. Grateful. Later that night, as Daniel prepared to leave, Ayanda walked him to the door. "You know," she said, "people will always try to turn this into something else." Daniel nodded. "I know, but I don't need you to save us." Ayanda continued. "We're standing." Daniel met her gaze. "And I don't need to be your hero," she smiled. "Good." He paused, then said softly, "Still, I hope I can be present." Ayanda nodded. "That's enough." As Daniel walked away, Ayanda closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. She wasn't thinking of the road where it had all begun. She was thinking of the future, not a perfect one, a real one. Weeks later, Daniel attended the reopening of a refurbished wing at St. Luke's Public General Hospital. No speech, no plaque with his name, just nurses, doctors, and patients moving through cleaner halls, brighter rooms. Nurse Aisha caught sight of Ayanda in the crowd and smiled broadly. "You look well." Ayanda returned the smile. "So do you." When Daniel was asked quietly why he had done all this, he answered simply, "Because someone once stopped for me when it wasn't convenient." That night, Ayanda sat on her bed writing numbers in a small notebook, savings expenses plans. Charity slept curled beside her. Ibrahim's soft breathing came from the next room. Ayanda closed the notebook and looked around. This was not a fairy tale. It was better. It was a life built slowly on choices, not miracles, on kindness without spectacle, on dignity that could not be taken away. And somewhere in the city, a man who once believed power was everything now understood that the smallest act done at the right moment could change not just one life, but many. In life, the moments that change everything rarely announce themselves. They come quietly, wrapped in exhaustion, fear, and uncertainty. A decision made when no one is watching, a hand extended when turning away would be easier, a choice driven not by reward but by conscience. Ayanda Nkosi did not save Daniel Tete because she expected gratitude, wealth, or recognition. She stopped because a life mattered, and that single act, born from compassion in the middle of her own suffering, set a chain of events into motion that transformed many lives, including her own. This story reminds us that kindness is not weakness. It is courage. It is the strength to act when you have little to give, when it costs you something, and to stand firm when the world tries to reduce you to your circumstances. And it reminds us that true justice is not revenge but restoration, not humiliation but accountability, not charity that creates dependence but support that restores dignity. So here's the question for you. If you were standing in the rain that night, would you have stopped? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if stories of hope, moral courage, and quiet transformation speak to your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Sometimes the smallest choice becomes the greatest legacy.